My dad threatened to skip my wedding unless I invited the stepmom who tormented me, so I erased them from my life and made sure they'd regret it forever. I, 25 female, am getting married to my high school sweetheart, and we recently sent out the invitations to our wedding. My fiancé Caleb, 25 male, and I decided I would only invite my parents to the wedding but not my stepmother. It was a very easy decision for me to make because she's a really horrible person, and I would not want her at my wedding because she would just find a way to ruin it. My stepmother, let's call her Jan, 47 female, married my father when I was in 5th grade. My parents got divorced when I was really little, and they were never together when I was growing up. They had shared custody, and I spent half the month at my dad's place and the other half with my mom. It was a great arrangement, and I got the best of both worlds, so I was happy about it. My parents dated other people in the meantime, but they were just flings and were not permanent enough for me to care about. This went on for a couple of years, and everything was going well until my father started dating Jan. They started dating around the time I was in 6th grade, and when he introduced her to me for the first time, she was perfectly pleasant, and I actually liked her. But then her behavior got worse around me, and she constantly made me feel like I was a burden, as if she hated being around me. Look, I get it, a lot of people don't like kids, but I don't think that's an excuse to treat them poorly. After one point, I was practically scared of her and wouldn't approach her at all because I thought she would yell at me. It had happened enough times for me to see it coming, so I stopped trying to talk to her or befriend her. At first, she would just make faces whenever I would enter the room or act really annoyed when I was around, so I tried to be as silent and easily ignored as possible. But after she got engaged, she started treating me even worse and actively picked on me whenever she could. She would try to do it behind my dad's back at first, but then she got married, and after that, there was no stopping her. She made my childhood a total nightmare, and the worst part was that my father never stood up for me. She was the kind of woman who saw me as competition. I don't know why, because that seems really unhealthy and kind of crazy, but I can tell you guys now that that was how she used to act, like I was the contender for her throne or something. She would bully me constantly and make me feel like crap about my appearance, but it didn't stop there. She would even talk about my mother badly and say really nasty things about her. It would boil my blood, and I would often talk back to her, but my dad always scolded me for it, and she got away with everything. I tried to talk to my dad several times, but he was so blinded by her that he didn't even seem to realize that he was alienating me. He would always defend her and say that I was the problem. The only thing that he would say was that I was important to him, but so was she, and I would just have to get along with her because he wasn't ready to let go of either of us. He claimed that she would only occasionally get annoyed with me because I tried too hard and she didn't like that. He excused all the bullying by saying that it was just her being concerned about me and that she didn't intend to mock me, but I'm not an idiot. I knew what was going on, and I knew that he was in denial. He was just trying to convince himself that the woman he had married was not an absolute monster. I didn't realize it back then, but I know now that my father had always been selfish in thinking about me. But back then, it was really important for me to have a relationship with my dad, and that's why I was even willing to put up with Jan even though she was a total nightmare to live with. I let her stomp all over me and completely shatter my self-esteem, all because I wanted my father to be happy with me. I honestly wanted nothing more than to go back to having a normal family with both my parents loving me equally, and I stayed with my dad without complaint because I hoped that things would fix themselves eventually. I never told my mother about this because I was afraid that if she found out how Jan was treating me, she would file for full custody, and then I would never get to see my father again. After a while, I even stopped complaining about Jan's behavior to my dad because I was paranoid that he might give up his rights. I would end up in the same place, and I would never be able to see him again. I was also afraid that Jan might make him give up custody, but that one was out of my control, so the best I could do was just bother her and constantly walk on eggshells around her. I guess it's safe to say that my childhood was not easy, and growing up in my father's house was extremely difficult, but I got through it somehow. I still maintain a relationship with my father even after I left his home. Call me foolish, but I was really attached to both my parents, and I couldn't imagine a life without them. I was willing to put up with whatever it took, and so Jan got away with everything. She bullied me throughout high school, and my mental health really took a hit. I turned into this weird, silent, introverted kid that I never was before Jan took over the household, but I tried my best to put on a brave face. The only thing that got me through it was the fact that in a few years I would be going away to college, and then she wouldn't be able to ruin my life anymore. So when it was finally time for me to leave for college, there was nobody happier on the planet than I was. I was thrilled to finally be going away, and the cherry on top of that was the fact that I was going to college out of state, so I would only have to come back for the holidays. I could just choose to spend the major holidays with my mom while still maintaining a relationship with my father and doing my best not to offend him so he doesn't cut me off. It was a crazy balancing act, but I got through it somehow, and that went on for a couple of years. Even after I graduated from college and got a job, I was trying my best to maintain a relationship with my father while still putting up with Jan, who only seemed to be getting worse with age. She was vicious most of the time and would actively try to get me worked up, but I wouldn't let her succeed, and that only made her worse. One day, I was visiting my father for lunch, and she started picking on me again, so I completely lost it, and we got into a very nasty fight. That was probably 3 years ago, and after that, my dad would only invite me home when Jan was not there. I think by that time he had finally realized that Jan was always horrible to me and that was never going to change, but he also probably wanted to have a relationship with me because I was his only child. So we started meeting in person either at restaurants or when he knew for a fact that Jan wasn't going to be at home. It was kind of strange but also a huge relief now that I didn't have to deal with her constantly being around us and trying to make everything about herself and her weird issues with me, not to mention the fact that the issues that she had with me were completely made up and arbitrary. She hated me just because she could, and she didn't really need a reason for it. Part of me actually even thinks that she might have been one of those crazy people who just enjoyed treating other people badly, especially kids. Otherwise, if she really saw me as competition, then she would have forced my dad to kick me out or give up custody, but she kept me around just so she could pick on me whenever she wanted to. And then around the same time, I started dating Caleb. After dating for a few months, I decided that it was finally time for my parents to meet him, so I introduced him to them at my birthday dinner in my apartment, and everybody seemed to get along. Jan was obviously not invited to that dinner because we were not on speaking terms at the time, and after that, we never really reconciled, so she never knew anything about my relationship with Caleb. We got engaged a couple of months ago and have been planning for the wedding ever since. It didn't occur to us at any point that Jan might want to be invited to the wedding because after the way she treated me throughout my childhood and the last fight that we had, I didn't even think that she wanted to have anything to do with me. Besides, we hadn't spoken in over 3 years, and she never attempted to make things right with me, so why would I invite her to my wedding? But then the invitations were sent out recently, and my father contacted me to tell me that Jan was really upset and offended that she didn't receive one. Caleb and I weren't exactly letting people bring +1s because we intended on having a small and private ceremony, so it was very clear that she was not welcome at the wedding, and I don't even know why she was expecting to be invited because she hadn't even been invited to the engagement party. There was no way that she couldn't have known about it because it was all over social media. Granted, I have blocked her, but she still might have heard about it from someone, and honestly, I'm sure that my dad must have told her about it, so she knew all along. And I didn't buy it for 1 second that she just had no idea this was happening. She had every opportunity to reach out to me and apologize, and then I probably would have considered inviting her to the wedding, but there was no apology, so why should I even consider it? It just doesn't make sense. But my father for some reason believes that I should invite her because she is my stepmom after all. I honestly think that it's a ridiculous idea, and I told him as such, but he's pretty bent on it, and we have been arguing about it for days. I really don't think Jan deserves to be invited to my wedding because that would mean that I consider her family, and I really do not. We had been talking about this for quite some days, and yesterday my father told me that if I didn't invite Jan to the wedding, then he wouldn't be attending either because it was quite insulting that his wife wouldn't be invited to such an important family event. I was shocked that he would even say something like this because so far he hadn't even tried to make things right between me and Jan after the fight. I could understand that Jan was probably doing this because she wanted to create drama before the wedding, and she's just an attention seeker, so she was probably enjoying this. But I couldn't imagine why my father was indulging her. He could simply just tell her that after terrorizing me my entire childhood, she had no right to expect to be invited to my wedding, but instead of standing up to her, he was once again making it seem like I was the problem here and trying to get me to change my mind about who I was inviting to my wedding, something he had absolutely no say in, mind you. I had actually started to believe that after the fight, my father was finally coming back to his senses and wasn't going to take me for granted again, but after what he said last night, I realized that it was never going to happen, and he was always going to put Jan over me. So I told him that it was probably for the better if he didn't attend the wedding and that I would be resending my invitation since I now believe that neither he nor Jan do deserve to be present at such an important event. I told him that he was just as bad, if not worse, than Jan because she had been the one who bullied me throughout my childhood and teenage years, but he was the one who allowed her to do it and get away with it with no consequences just because he was too much of a coward to stand up to his wife and defend his own daughter. He had never taken a stand for me, and it was foolish of me to expect that he would do it at this point, so I told him that I would rather he not attend the wedding at all or even try to contact me in the future because I was done dealing with this. Then I hung up and told Caleb about the conversation that I had with my father because I wanted someone to reassure me that I had done the right thing. I had no idea what was going to happen next because I had always just assumed that maybe at some point my father would be able to see Jan for what she truly was and stand up for me. Clearly that was never going to happen, and I had to come to terms with it now. I had expected him to try and reach out to me at least once after the fight, but he didn't. The people who did reach out to me, however, were his family, who wanted to tell me that I was being extremely ungrateful and that I needed to apologize to my father. Honestly, I don't know what's ungrateful about what I did. I was just honest and finally stood up for myself after years of deluding myself into believing that my father actually cared about me. Maybe he does, but clearly not enough to tell Jan to back off. His love for me is not limitless and unconditional, and neither is mine, and I think it's a bit unfair to expect me to invite the woman who completely ruined my childhood to such an important event. I don't trust her, and I would never want her around me after this, so it's ridiculous of her to even expect that she would be invited to my wedding. I think I'm being completely fair by cutting off my father for giving me an ultimatum, but my dad's side of the family thinks that I'm being ungrateful. A lot of them have texted me or even called me to let me know that they are incredibly disappointed in me and that they expected better. By better, they mean that they wanted me to just let my dad do whatever he wanted to, and I must stick around regardless of how that makes me feel. They think that I should invite Jan to the wedding just because my dad says so. Apparently, I owe it to my father because he was the one who raised me and gave me a nice childhood, and he was the one who sent me to college and is the reason why I have a good life now. Honestly, I don't think that's such a big deal. Lots of people do it for their kids. I have always been thankful to my dad for whatever he has done for me, but I don't think he deserves to be worshipped because of it. Like any other parent, he did things for me when I was a kid. Big deal. That doesn't mean he can just say and do whatever he wants now, and I have to put up with it. Also, let's not forget that I have also made allowances for him. He let Jan bully me throughout my life, and I don't know how people are missing that very significant part of our relationship. It was no secret that she used to terrify me when I was a kid, and my dad never seemed to mind it. All his family members knew about it, and they pretended that it was not a big deal. It's only a problem if I stand up for myself, I guess. My mother thinks I'm being perfectly fair, and so does Caleb. I'm just here to get an unbiased opinion and make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So, Ida for telling my dad that he doesn't need to attend my wedding because he wanted me to invite my stepmom? I have decided to stick to my decision of cutting my father off. Only after reading the comments did I realize just how much he had been taking me for granted all my life. It's actually insane how much I was willing to put up with just so I could have a relationship with my father, and even that wasn't enough for him. I just can't believe that he just doesn't care about his only daughter, and he still doesn't care. It's a horrible feeling, and it just sucks, but it is what it is, and I can't change it. Caleb and my mother have been very helpful and supportive and are trying to help me work through my feelings during this difficult time. It's bad enough as it is. I don't need my father's side of the family bothering me constantly and trying to remind me of all the great things that my father has done for me since I was a kid. Most of the things they talked about are things that literally every parent in this world does, but they think that my dad is somehow special for doing it for me. I haven't been replying to any messages because it's all really difficult to process since these are people who have actually watched me grow up, and they're still against me somehow or because they want to whitewash my father's image. I don't know what they think they're going to accomplish by constantly texting me and telling me that I'm being ungrateful, but I'm sure as heck not going back on my word and inviting my father or trying to fix things with him. I said what I had to say, and now he either owns up to his mistakes or stays away from me. It's as simple as that. I'm not even asking much of him. I'm not telling him that he needs to leave his wife because I hate her, even though that's what I should be doing because she is a terrible person, but I am still willing to be the bigger person and let him attend my wedding if he just apologizes to me for everything that he did wrong. That's all I want, but clearly that's too much to ask from someone like my father who doesn't even want to acknowledge the fact that he screwed up and only cares about being perceived as a good guy. He doesn't actually want to be the good guy, and I get that now. I really do. I had believed and forced myself into actually thinking of my father as a decent human being who cared about me, but that's not true. Any father who cared about his daughter would never let his wife or anybody else treat them the way Jan treated me, but he not only allowed it, he let her get away with it for years on end. So no, he's certainly not an ideal father, and I'm not being ungrateful. So the wedding day is coming closer, and it's been a month since I last spoke to my father. My relatives on my dad's side of the family stopped contacting me or trying to tell me that I was wrong after a few days, and I was cut off from that side altogether. I can't say that it made me feel bad because it really didn't. It just made me feel grateful that everybody had shown their true colors before the wedding, and now there would be no drama at my wedding. But unfortunately that didn't rule out the possibility of there being drama before my wedding. I almost forgot about the whole fight with my father because I have been so busy planning and managing work. I've just been really swamped with work and stuff, so when the other day my dad showed up at my house, I was completely blindsided. Of course, I had to let him in because I'm not the kind of person who can simply just refuse to let people inside the house, especially when it comes to my father. I don't know if that makes me weak, but I can't turn my parents away even if I'm fighting with them. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought that he was going to apologize for a few seconds when he entered the house, but that's not what happened. I mean, I guess you could call it an apology in the weakest sense of the word, but he's still not attending my wedding, so there was no point in that. He came to my house around noon and left about 3 hours later. We had an in-depth discussion about our relationship and how to go about fixing it. We couldn't come to a decision, but the discussion that we had was much needed. He finally addressed the fact that Jan had been a bully and that he had let things slide when I was a kid simply because he didn't want to pick a fight with Jan. It was actually pretty refreshing to hear him acknowledge that because I had never really expected him to own up to the truth. So far, his only strategy had been to gaslight me into believing that I was somehow responsible for the way that she used to treat me as a kid. I would believe it because my dad was saying it, but as I grew up, I knew that that was not the case. I still never spoke up against it because I was so desperate to have a relationship with him, and I didn't want him to cut me off, but now it was finally all out in the open. Once he had acknowledged it, I thought he was going to say that he was sorry for everything that he had done, but he didn't. Instead, he said that while he did feel bad about it, he couldn't say that he was sorry for what he did because it was the only way that he could have a normal life without constantly having to worry about either Jan or me. Now, I don't think that was necessarily true because he could have intervened and tried to fix things between us, but he stayed out of it on purpose because he didn't want to stand up to Jan. Gaslighting me into believing that I was somehow the problem was much easier than talking to his wife because kids are much easier to manipulate, and everyone knows that. He also knew that I would never do anything to jeopardize my relationship with him, and he shamelessly used that fact against me to control me and make sure that I wasn't much trouble to deal with. So Jan continued to bully me, and my dad just stayed out of her way and let me face her wrath. He told me that he loved both of us and didn't want to ruin either of these relationships, so he tried to shirk his responsibilities, and he was successful in doing so. And while he didn't apologize to me at any point because he never really said the words that he was sorry, I can't count it as a genuine apology. He did express interest in being a part of my life going forward and suggested that we start therapy together or at least do something to remedy the situation. He also told me that he still couldn't attend my wedding if I didn't invite Jan because she actually had been really offended that she hadn't been invited. She had expected me to let go of the past even though she had done things that nobody would ever be able to let go of, and my dad had already agreed that he wouldn't be attending the wedding if she wasn't invited. As a matter of fact, Jan didn't even know about my dad's most recent visit to my place because she was against the idea of us having a relationship. Apparently, she had allowed it when I was a kid because she believed that it was important for my father to actually feel like a dad and have me around. But I was a full-grown woman now, and I could handle myself, so I didn't need to come running to daddy every time I was in trouble. And that's great logic, I suppose, to separate a father from his daughter. I can't believe that he's actually falling for it and letting her get away with these things even now, but I don't really know what to expect from my father anymore. We had a really long discussion the other day, but it ended up going nowhere. I have no idea if there is any point in trying to make things work with my dad because Jan will always be his top priority, and I don't think I can deal with that anymore. I just don't even know what to say about him. This is all just really very upsetting. I'm happy to inform you guys that Caleb and I are married now. We got married the way we wanted to with the people that we wanted around us just a few days ago, and it was dreamy and beautiful. And no, my dad was not present at the ceremony. Like many of you guys, I had also been wishing that by some miracle he would come to his senses and leave Jan so he could attend my wedding. Sadly, that's not what happened, and we are still not on talking terms now. I know that in my last update I said that he and I had a discussion about this, and we were going to work on our relationship and start therapy and stuff like that, but none of it materialized after that. That conversation, we tried to keep in touch, but he just stopped responding to me after a couple of days. I kept trying to talk to him and reach out to him, but he just never replied. After that, I got busy with work again because I had to wrap up everything before I took leave for my wedding, and I forgot to text him or check up on him. He could have texted me, but he didn't, and we stopped speaking after that. I got to know from a couple of other relatives who were still on talking terms with me that he and Jan had moved away to the suburbs recently, and that's probably what he was busy with. But I can't figure out why he didn't share that with me or why he even bothered to visit me that one last time and make a bunch of promises that he wasn't going to live up to anyway. I was doing just fine, and honestly, I'm still doing fine. But I was just a little put off and disappointed that even after making those promises and saying that we would work on our relationship, he still didn't bother to actually show up for me and make it count. It's fine though. He's disappointed me enough times for me to get used to it, but I'm not going to let it happen again now. I'm just going to focus on the relationships that I already have and the people who actually care about me, like my husband and my mother. Caleb and I are leaving for our honeymoon in a couple of days, and that's the only thing I'm going to think about now.